Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. I'm filming my journal that I created for Gipsy Rose Paperie's Stash Buster Challenge. I have a lot of stuff in my stash that's frilly and lacy, and I think it's beautiful, and I buy it, and then when I put it together, I never like the outcome because it's just not my style, even though I love it. So anyway, I went through my stash and I pulled out stuff. I did not buy anything to make this. Let's just look at it, show you what I used. The closure is this length of crochet that I had forever and ever in my stash. It's really pretty. I used some Stamperia papers. I used a lot of printables that I had printed out and used parts of the kits and then just had the rest in a container somewhere forever and ever and ever. I have been gifted some of these fairy wings. The theme of this is kind of woodland fairyland, or ethereal woodland. So I used a lot of eyelash trim, which was one of the discussions that I had a lot of and rarely ever used. Some charms that I rarely ever use because they were kind of cutesy. I usually end up using the ones that are more dark. Anyway, here's a cutout from a Stamperia paper pad that I used on the cover. The fabric from the cover was, it kind of looked like a pillowcase. It had an Asian embroidered theme on it, but it didn't go with my book, but the colors went with my book, so I just covered it up with this, and it ended right here. This is actually the lining. I doubled it up and most of it was covered, so I felt like it looked okay. Let me make sure I'm still in frame. A lot of the printables, like I said, they're offcuts, a lot of offcuts in here. This particular page is Dreams, etc. Leftover printables, some lace I had. This is a real butterfly wing I made a specimen out of, but no butterflies were harmed in the making of this book. This was found out on my lawn. My daughter found a bunch of them. Apparently some birds had a field day eating butterflies. Sad but true. More of that eyelash trim, some lace from my stash, more of that Stamperia paper. Now I never ever use this trim with these, I don't even know what you call it, balls on it, but I had a lot. Apparently people have gifted it to me over the years, and so I used almost all of it in this book. So I did a lot of sewing that I normally don't. Here is a journaling card, and there's some lace and sewing and some things I printed out from Pinterest. And this is actually the inside of a die cut, the part you usually throw away, that I had thrown back in my stash because I like the wood grain paper. This was a printable from Mrs. Coggs that I printed out and hadn't used. I used others in the package. Here is some more of that Stamperia paper on some tags that I had in my stash. This tag is a cutout from the paper. I just backed it on some tea stain paper. This is fabric pocket from some fabric I just had in my stash, and lace. Here's some more of that eyelash yarn. These are stamps that actually met the theme, that were from a package I had ordered on Etsy, and when they mailed it to me, it had all these gorgeous, gorgeous stamps on it, so I saved that and cut them out. Here's some lace from my stash and some ledger from my stash. Oh, I also had this book that I got from my mom's basement. My parents have lived in their house for like literally 70 years. And this was a Henry David Thoreau book that I used to look at when I was a child, and it had gorgeous pictures, so I used that a lot throughout this. This is a picture of Walden Pond. This is the other side of that page. the bottom had something unrelated, so I covered it up with a fabric pocket made from fabric and lace from my stash. Here's another journaling card made from the Stamperia paper, and more of the insides of die cuts that I had saved. Again, that wood grain paper, because I thought it was really cool. Some more eyelash yarn. Here's another cutout from the Stamperia paper. This is something I had printed off of Pinterest a while ago and hadn't used. This is an envelope I actually cut a birthday card in, but I was able to cover it up with paper and reuse it. This is another photograph from that Henry David Thoreau book. Here's some coffee dyed paper. This is some lace that I had dyed for a journal I made for April from Pink Godbird, and I had some left, so I used it in this journal. This is a printout I had printed a long time ago from Pinterest, more stamps from that envelope I was talking about. And this is just a coin envelope. I left the top a little portion open so that I could clip it shut should I want to put anything in it. Here is some more of that pom-pom fringe that I never ever used but seemed to have a lot of. Here's some more lace from my stash. Here's a picture from that Henry David Thoreau book. This was a printout from Dreams, Etc. It actually was shrunken. It had been page size that I printed out for another book I'd been working on and just never used. So it's now an insert in this book. It's blank on the back for journaling. Here's some more of those stamps, some more leftovers from laces and trims that I had in my stash. I had these cards that I never use and happen to have the words "good call." Thought that was cute. I left part of the poetry that was in the Thoreau book on this side because it was, pretty much an intact poem. I don't like it when you can't tell like half of it's cut off. Usually I cover that up. I made a tuck out of some leftover paper and some leftover embossed paper I had used on a previous project. This is a cutout from the Stamperia paper, and that's just a butterfly I had in my stash from Michael's. Here's some more lace that was from my stash, and some coffee dyed paper, some more of that pom-pom trim. This is a picture from the Thoreau book, as is this, but there was like cut off text on this side. You couldn't really read it or tell what it said, so I made a pocket, covered it up. This is a cutout from the Stamperia paper. This is a page I had from a book I had purchased, a used book I had purchased, and it was just floating around in my stash, so I used that to cover up some of the text that I didn't like. I had made a bunch of these slides. Some of them I didn't like too much, so I ended up just pasting one of the stamps that I was talking about in the center of it. I had some leftover cutouts from die cutting that I used. This was from I would say a B printable. I don't even know who it was from. I just like the calendar on the bottom of it. So I had some old wallpaper in my stash. Again, colors that I rarely ever use. So I just covered it with that and sewed around it. Added a little lace. Here's some more tea stain paper. Some more cutoffs. This stamp I had in my stash just happened to match the gray, and it had a woodland theme, so I was very excited about that when I found it. This was a printable, probably floating around in my stash for years. I have no idea who it's even from. Added a little lace, made it into a pocket. Here's some more of that trim. This is the other side of that envelope. I just glued it down and added a Stamperia cutout so you have room to journal. This is some more lace that I left over. Again, there's text under here, but I kind of covered it up. This is a pocket. This flips out for pictures or journaling. This was a picture I had printed off of Pinterest for another project I never used. Here's some antique buttons that were in my stash, some more of that eyelash trim. Here's a tag that I made from leftover papers, some just little snippets of fabric I never throw out because that's just who I am. Here's a picture I printed off Pinterest, and I did some sewing on that. So that's a tag for that pocket. This page is just, it had a lot of text on it. This is the photograph that was left on the page. I had some extra pieces of the wallpaper and some paper left over, so I just covered the text. Again, you can journal on this part. You can actually journal on the whole thing if you use the right color pen. Here's some more ledger, an offcut. Here's a little snippet of fabric I had left from another project that I'm using as a tip-in, and a piece of tea-dyed paper I had in my stash. This was a bag I'd received in some Happy Mail that had been coffee stained, and I don't tend to use these a lot in my journals, but especially because it was pink. But I had this doily, so I dressed it up a bit. I put one of those Stamperia cutouts from the pad in it. Here's a tip-in, some more of that fabric, some snippets of lace and fabric I had left over, some lace on the edges. Oops, we're caught here. This is a cutout from the Stamperia pad. This is the rest of that antique wallpaper. Here is a die cut I had cut out for another project. I put some cellophane from packaging in it to make it a little window, and I had printed this out from Miss Cog's beautiful witches kit a long time ago, and she just seemed to fit the ethereal fairy-ish kind of theme, so I put her in here. There's some trims I had left over, a little tiny piece in my stash. This is an actual fern that I got out of my woods, and I made a little specimen with it. There's an antique button from my stash, some charms from my stash. This I fussy cut out of something I had printed a long time ago and was still sitting in the printables box. It's a little piece of an offcut. Here is some handmade paper that I had saved the very, very end of because it was gorgeous. That had been in my stash for a while. A little piece of lace fabric that had been from a garment. And here's a little cutout from the Thoreau book. It said every day a new picture is painted. I thought that was very cool. This is some leftover paper from Dreams Etc. that I had printed out and was sitting in that bin. And some lace from my stash. Well, of course, everything's from my stash. Here is also from Dreams Etc. a fairy doorway that I had printed out. Apparently one time I was going to make a fairy book and never made it. So there was a lot of stuff printed out in that bin. Look at this beautiful lace. Oh, I adore this. It's so delicate. I think I sat on that and hoarded it for a while. That's probably why it's there, but I think it just went so well with this paper. I really like that. Here's another cutout from the Stamperia paper. Butterfly from the Michaels kit package. This is a bit of lace. Here's another picture from that Thoreau book. Again, it had some text here that didn't make any sense, so I covered it up with some tea-stained paper from my stash. And men say they know many things. That seemed relevant, and it made sense, so I left it there. This page is washi and paper from my stash because, again, it had text that just was cut off and didn't make any sense. So from that fairy book that I apparently never made, I had printed out some small pages, and I just included them as a flip out here. Let me get back into frame. This is a glassine envelope. Again, just stuff I had left over from other projects. Here's another one of those stamps. A little bit of lace that had been left over. This is another one of those die cutouts that I had the center of. I just put a little coffee stained fabric and cut out from a tag that had been floating around in my stash for a million years and did some sewing. Here's another picture I printed out on Pinterest and had never used. Put on a little piece of leftover cardstock and made a pocket. Some lace, add a little tiny tag. This is just a strip of the Stamperia paper. I just thought this needed a little dressing up for some reason, because you know, I can never not embellish anything. Here is some more ledger. Another one of those tip-ins, a little bit of that lace again. This is something I actually printed out for that fairy journal as well. Had made some journaling cards, just never made the journal. So it's now a journaling card in here. Here's some more of that trim. Here's a card from the Stamperia paper pack. A little bit of lace from my stash. Again, just some extra tidbits of fabric and trims that I had left over from other projects. Another tip-in, some more of that pom-pom trim. This is a pocket from the Stamperia leftovers. It was an offcut that I backed on craft cardstock. And then this was some paper I'd gotten from like the Dollar Tree or something like that. It's thin. It was supposed to be for, you know, put Mod Podge down and put it on, but I just glued it down. I thought it looked pretty. Again, another leftover die cut. Here's a page from that Thoreau book. Here's a poem from that Thoreau book, and again, there was some weird text on the side, so I just used some of the leftover wallpaper, made a small pocket with some lace, and if you want to read it, you can flip the lace up. Here's some tea stain paper, a little charm I had floating around in my stash. This was an envelope that came in the mail and had, like, you know, one of those return and get our credit card offer things, so I covered it with some of that paper. Some lace, some leftover sari silk that was in my stash, some antique buttons. This is kind of cool. This was a big button with a divot in it. This was a big button with, it protrudes a little bit, and funny enough, I didn't do this on purpose, but they actually like match right into each other when you fold them closed, which is funny. Here's a little ticket I had in my stash. Again, this page had some weird text on it, so I just took my offcuts and a little decoration from the Stamperia paper. This is like a little tuck, if you wish. I used a die cut to create this, and then just used basically everything that I had left over to make some tags, and the very last of the Stamperia cutouts. This is some mop fringe that I had floating around forever and a day. Here is a little tuck that I made from leftovers, one of those stamps and one of those tickets. This was a Stamperia cutout, and I used the very last of those fairy wings. I cut them in half and gave him wings. I thought that was cute. Might not show up very well on camera though. It's cute. It's kind of iridescent in real life. Some more lace from my stash. The very last tidbits left of this lace. Some more ledger. Here's a fabric pocket that I created from leftovers. This is another picture from that Thoreau book. I just added it to things I found in my stash and made a journaling card. This was a tag that I had printed eons ago. I don't even know what kit it came from. It was in that bin of pre-printed stuff, and I just basically took every last piece of stuff I could find and glued it to it. I actually think it turned out okay. Here is, I covered up the part of the text that didn't make sense, but this was beautiful, and it had such incredible imagery, and it actually talks about how the forest is a fairyland, so I left that in here. I thought this was beautiful. It actually said birds carry the skies on their back, but part of it was cut off, so I just left birds carry the skies. Again, from the Thoreau book. This is, oh, and also, this is a pocket on the edge. This is a flip out. This is a pocket, and this is part of that Dreams Etc. kit that I never used the whole thing. I had this fabric. It was fuzzy, and it looked like squirrel fur to me. And I had another one of those Mrs. Coggs printouts for her woodland creatures, and I made a squirrel tag. And here's the very last of that pom-pom trim. I had one pom-pom left, so it's part of that tag. This is remainder of fabrics I had, little tiny pieces of, and another one of those stamps. It's just a tuck. Oops. This is a lace pocket. This was the biggest piece of lace that I had left over. This is just a little snippet because the chunk of lace was missing here. I cut it out for something else. I just covered it up with a little snippet, added a charm. Here's another tag made from those offcuts and a piece of that bag that I had talked about previously that I rarely ever use, and a leftover die cut on the top. More Stamperia paper. This was the other side of that offcut, so I just added a little lace. You can journal around it. These were, again, some little tags that I had in my stash forever. Here's the rest of that bag. I just cut a little thing to show it's a pocket, little half circle, and on the back here, just one little strip left of the Stamperia paper, so I placed a little tag in it, made it a tiny pocket. And that's the end of the book. And that's the back cover. And it is a chunky monster. I don't usually use a lot of laces. It really makes for a big book. But I'm actually quite happy with the way it turned out. It's not my usual style, but I'm actually happy with it, which I'm shocked about. But I appreciate Dolly making me go through my stash and use things that I've had forever and a day and make something I actually enjoyed. So thanks so much for the inspiration. All right, you guys have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.